Welcome to Creatacast with your host, David Welch. And today's show is on the road. I'm driving back from Arlington to the Fort Hood, Killeen area of Texas. For those of you who know where that's at, you know I'm on the 35 getting home. Today's show is a special show about consistency, the importance of consistency, and the publishing game, and getting your work out there. Because that's the ultimate goal of a writer. The ultimate goal of a writer is to have their work consumed by as many readers as possible to build that legacy of a storyteller. And it's important to have consistency with your writing. Now, I know I'm very consistent with short stories. Like, I can churn those things out like butter and consistent as you can get, but doing a novel is something I've not been yet successful with or consistent. So I'm building my brand, I'm learning how to do that, and I'm tackling each chapter as if it is a short story. And that's very important for me, is building that. So another thing that's important to me as a writer is publishing, getting my work out there. Now, there's multiple ways to publish. When it comes to poetry, there are mechanisms in place that can help you get your work out there. There are .coms that are more than willing to take your work and publish. You know, they'll take your work and, you know, get it out there to the masses, but of course you have to pay a small fee. It's self-publishing. Generally, when people self-publish, it doesn't really reach the audience number you want it to, but that doesn't mean it can't, especially if you've got the money to spend on the marketing. And that's the important thing, is getting the money to spend on the marketing side of the house. When it comes to the process of actually getting your book published, that's really not too hard. Kindle direct publishing is fantastic in that realm when it comes to getting books out quickly. I mean, if I were to work on a book and, you know, go the self-publishing route, I'd be able to have my poetry book out in probably 48 hours. And that's just being conservative with the time, because I have to review your book cover and take a look at the content inside, make sure there's no plagiarism or copyright infringement, anything like that. But then, if that's passing muster and that's in the clear, then you're good to go. So that's that mechanism. Kindle Direct Publishing, for those who are trying to get a book off the ground without querying for an agent, that's the route you can go. Okay. Another route you can go, like I said, a lot of these .coms, poetrysoup.com, realisticpoetry.com, they have book deals for certain lengths of poetry books. 30 pages, 50 pages, 100 pages of poetry. They have different steps on their ladder of marketing and things like that. And they let you know where the book's going to be available and where you can reach that to buy copies of your own book to get it out there, or request a number of books to get it out there. The route that a lot of writers have challenges with and is probably one of the tough routes to go, is the querying for an agent, getting your manuscript in the hands of a major publisher. And that's probably the most challenging route to go for an author in their authoring journey. The reason that's challenging is because your work is new. It may be different than what they've seen before. So, you know, they're taking a huge risk on you as a writer. That's why they have literary agents that read your work before it ever gets accepted by the publisher. And then those literary agents, based on their experience and who they've read and what they understand is a novel format and storytelling format make that ultimate decision on whether or not to work with you as an author. And that is challenging because they receive hundreds of manuscripts a year, and they have a budget to work with and a marketing budget to try and work, as many good novels as they can with new authors. And there's new authors that churn up every day. That's why self-publishing has gotten super popular. Now, there are authors that self-publish at first and then get picked up by a major publisher because of the quality of their work, like Dave Strickland. Guy's amazing. His work was, first brought out there, and he self-published, and then from there he was reached out by a publisher who decided to work with his next 3 books. So that's that route. That can happen. Sorry, my wife's texting me, guys. Every time. She wants me to bring her food. All right, I'll do that after the podcast, or after the Creatacast when I get home. All right, guys. So back to it. So again, you have to, as a writer, think about what your publishing options are, and where you're at as a writer. Like for me, I didn't believe I had the chops to throw my work to a major publisher until I've had enough schooling and enough writing time under my belt to make that move. And that's for me. That's not for everybody. If you feel you have the chops now, go ahead and make the leap of faith. Jump. Do what you can. And maybe that feedback, whether it's good or bad, whatever have you, is going to give you that boost you need, or give you that life lesson you need to say, hey, I am or I am not where I need to be to make this happen. And that's always a good learning lesson. That's always a lesson that you can take to the bank and say, you know what? Based on, where I'm at as a writer and what I'm doing with my craft, I'm not there yet because I've gotten an overwhelming response that it's not ready. They're not ready for either your type of story, or they're not ready for your format and the way you convey your story. And that's okay. I mean, sometimes it does take a while to get the work out there, and I hate getting texts during this cast. All right, there you go. No sound. So, but yeah, so it's all about what you choose to do as an author and what route you want to go. And it's okay. I mean, if you're an independent researcher and you want to get a book out on an obscure topic, then do it. If you're a horror sci-fi writer, there are publishers out there, small publishers, that are more than willing to help you get your work out there, even if it is a short story or a series of short stories. Short stories work if you have a theme. If you have a theme or a style or a particular genre that you stay in when you're in that writing mode. And if it's historical fiction, mystery, horror, or a combination of both, or action, adventure, whatever have you, if you're a short storyteller, that is okay too. There are publishers for you, and some of them will take care of you. They'll get your book in, Barnes and Noble or whatever have you for a limited run, and then after that you can bring them more work, or you can get them new work to publish, and that's a route you can go. Okay, so the way you're going to want to pursue your writing or get it out there as much as possible is a multitude of routes. There's no route that you need to take. There's nothing that makes you any less a writer than anyone else, whatever route you go. Now, of course, there's always the prestige, or there's always the notoriety with being picked up with a major publisher. And all that is an ego check. All that is to say, okay, well, me and a group of editors and a bunch of people pulled together my story, made it look a particular way that's been, churned out by a multitude of authors, and I regurgitate what everybody wants to be reading at the moment. You know, and sometimes they take a chance on new authors with a new spin, but that's okay too. Like, sometimes they're taking a big risk, and that's all right. We've seen that be profitable. You know, Harry Potter, we've seen that work. You know, Maze Runner, we've seen it work in a multitude of venues. So, you know, major publishers with literary agents that take chance on books, there's an enormous payoff for that. There's an enormous reward. So it's a risk, it's a gamble, but it's sure worth the shot. And it's okay if you're that author that gets that kind of lotto pickup, and that's fine too. If you're not that author and you're a little bit more meticulous, you're a little bit more tedious, you're going the route of a lot of other authors, then it takes time to build up to that level, and that's fine too. For me, I'm that way. I mean, it took me. For me, here's my journey. I waited until I started consistently being published in journals and magazines and things like that for me to say, you know what, hey, I've put my work out there to kind of practice literary agents. They've accepted my work, they enjoy my work, and then they've turned around and have hit the nose on the head when it comes to publishing my work and get it out there so people can read it in the digital magazine and go that route. And that's fine. You know, if that's the route that I take, then that's what it is. So my thing is, be consistent. Whatever route you choose, whether it's churning up manuscripts that you hope make it huge, then keep doing it. I mean, if you're and then listen to the feedback you're getting. If the feedback you're getting is, hey, you know, your stories lack continuity or your stories lack something, work closely with an editor, somebody who's, you know, going to give you that honest feedback that you need, and go that route. So be consistent. If you are a happy author being published in magazines and things like that, and you live for the short story, then do that. Then that's the route you go. That's the contribution to literature that you make. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with writing the short story. Nothing wrong with writing poetry or the creative nonfiction or the essays that are a little artistic. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. If your whole mode of writing and you're consistent at it and it's winning for you and it's working, then stick to your guns. Stick to, you know, your chops and make it a profitable endeavor for you. Now, and here's where writers fuck up. The writer fuck up is, hey, you know, I don't necessarily believe I should be paid, you know, quality money, or the quality of my writing isn't profitable, isn't making me money. Haberdash. Bullshit. You can make money as a writer. There's people that do it on Patreon all the time. They have a following more on Patreon than they would readers of their book. Because it's just the style of writing, it's the consistency of their writing that makes it work for their audience, their work, the people that receive them the most. You know, and same thing with artists. You know, like if you're an artist and you consistently paint and you consistently draw and you have a certain type of product you produce and people enjoy it and you're consistent with it, keep doing it. You know, we have Kincaid. He had a particular style, had a particular way of being, had a particular mode he liked to work in. So his work was produced, you know, at a very, very high rate as a painter, very high rate as a creative, and it was received super well. You know, a lot of people would give their left testicle for a nice Kincaid in their home, and those aren't cheap paintings. You know, if you got a Kincaid in your home, a true blue Kincaid, you went out on the lam and got you something that's worth it. You got you something that's worth its weight in gold visually, artistically, and aesthetically, you know, compared to what you're trying to do with the art. You know, I really don't think that if you bought, you know, Kincaid in the last 10 years, you're losing out on money. You're gaining a valuable asset to your home. Aesthetically, spiritually, physiologically, those works are magical on a lot of different scales. So, same thing with books. I mean, if you're a Harry Potter fan, and you have your Harry Potter books in your home, happily sitting on a shelf, and your kid, is of that age, and they dig into the Harry Potter books and they start reading them as fast as you did when you were a kid, or, with the same kind of hunger, you are winning. You are a champion. You are succeeding, and you're providing a wealth of entertainment and knowledge to the next generation. It's worth it. That's exactly what we need to do. Now, if you're self-published and your kid happens to find your manuscripts in a dusty cabinet later on down the road, and they end up getting those published, you're still winning. You're leaving a legacy, because people may not have been ready for your work at the moment. I mean, that sometimes comes with nuance. That sometimes comes with innovation. People are not ready for your type of work yet. They got to be worked slowly into it, or maybe there's a shift of consciousness that happens that makes your work more prevalent, makes your work more relevant, and makes your work, 100% ready for the time period. So that happens. Some people are not, as far as readers go, the readers may need to catch up to your style. That's okay. So just, stay on that tack. If you write a book that's in the first person, don't let another fucking author say, well, that's not how it's done. Well, fucking do it. There are plenty of books in the first person that are done so fucking well, and the stories are done amazingly, that you can still win with that. You can still achieve greatness. Okay? If you do your whole novel in second person, well, one, kudos freaking to you. Two, if you can make it work and it's well received, then, oh my goodness, you have achieved the goal and a feat. So, stick with it. Stick to consistency. Be consistent with your craft. Build upon your craft by being consistent. Have the same mechanics worked into your work. Now, if you've ever read Alexander Kent, who's a pseudonym for a author who writes British naval historical fiction, then you know all about cadence and consistency. That guy writes the same regardless, has the same way of composing his books, so they're all received kind of like how you would see an episode of Star Trek. Yes, sometimes the circumstances are different, but you fall in love with the consistency of the characters and what they say and what they do and how they act, because you can almost get to the point where you predict how they're going to be based on how he writes that. I love that about the author. I have all of his books. They're worth every damn penny to me at $15.95 a book or whatever I bought them for. If that's what it takes to support your favorite author, then do it. If you can read all their work via Kindle, do it. But make sure you support that author in some sort of way. And if you're like me, and you're like, wait, that's not the only book they have. It can't be the only work they have. And you're looking and scouring the internet and you can't find anything, why don't you just message the author? I would love somebody to send me a message like, hey, what else you got? What do you got in the pipeline? Fuck, let me be that guy. Let me receive that email or Facebook message or whatever. I'll talk your ear off all day about what's coming in the pipeline and how I'm working it. That'll give me motivation to fucking churn out shit quicker. Maybe hit you with another series of short stories, whatever have you. Okay? So consistency. Consistency is key. Consistency is what's going to get you up in the morning and keep you crunching. Even if you're sitting in front of your computer, staring at a blank screen, yelling and screaming to the writing gods because they're not producing what you want on the page, then, you need to reevaluate what worked for you in the past and hone the new skills that are working for you right now. What is working for you right now as a writer? What worked? Is there a time of day? Is there a certain setting? For me, when I was in college, my best writing environment, honestly, was the Village Inn. I'd go camp out. I'd have my books and my computer, and I'd have food while I'm writing. And next thing you know, I've got a whole play finished or a whole essay, 20-page essay completed, all while I'm focused on what I'm doing. That was the environment that worked for me. There was just enough background noise, and I was secluded. Nobody bothered me. Even the waitress was like, knew my cues. She knew when to come bother me and when not to. You know, I mean, she was there ready with, you know, some coffee if I needed it or whatever have you. Okay? If that's not the environment for you, and Starbucks or whatever coffee shop is local, if that's the environment for you, then go camp out and write in that environment. It's okay. Just make sure you give your patronage and buy your coffee, buy your tea, and buy your whatever, and sit there and work on your craft and conversate with whoever you need to conversate with while perfecting your craft. Sometimes that's what we need. Sometimes if we run into a roadblock, we need a springboard, like sometimes we have impromptu tutors out there, or impromptu teachers, somebody we're fond of, somebody we respect, who is a go-getter, not necessarily in our field, but is a go-getter that you respect and respond to. You know, somebody you take advice from. Contact them, say, hey, I'm running into this block. You know, I don't know how to finish this story. You know, and then, you know, of course, use the writing strategies available to you. Make a list. You know, bubble it out. Or find a mechanism that gets you back on that same mode of thinking you originally thought when you were trying to write what you needed to write. And have that whole story arc in your mind. Okay, before you put pen to paper. Sometimes the beauty of free writing is magic in itself, and you get to be creative on the spot. I love that. I work best in that mode. But sometimes I have the entire story plotted out in my brain before I ever put pen to paper, or before I ever start typing. It's already in my brain. I already know how it's going to start, what the middle looks like, and how it's going to end, and what the following action is, because I'm consistent with how my stories go. I have a very certain way and mode that I like to work in. But it took years to discover that, so be consistent. Find what works for you. And then, you know, if you're on the mission of publication, let's say you have 3 and 4 manuscripts completed, it would be your benefit and due diligence to pay maybe 1 or 2 editors to take a look at your work and see what works. See what's working, see what doesn't work. Get their feedback. You know, some of the best feedback I got in college were professors that I was fond of, but they whooped my ass when it came to my grade, because they were like, listen, I'm gonna hurt your ego and build your skill at the same time. And sometimes that's what we need. Sometimes we need that superior intellect to riff from, to learn from, to beat us down mechanically, because we haven't gotten certain basic mechanics worked through yet. Maybe we haven't gotten a certain mode of thinking down yet, and that's okay. Stay in that vein, stay in that mode, stay in that mantra of, you know, recycle, rinse, repeat, and improve upon. Innovation is key. Invention, sometimes, but innovation is most definitely key. You're going to find your cadence as an author, I promise you. But you also need to be a consistent reader. I'm not blowing smoke up your keister by saying this. If you do not consistently read and read and consume other works, then you're not gonna get ideas from the people that have already completed what you're trying to do. You're not done yet. If you've already read 20 books this year, that doesn't mean you're done. That just means that you've read 20 books this year. So what? You know, keep on that mode. Keep reading. You're not done reading. You're not done learning. You should be reading up to, and if not more than 2 to 3 hours a day. That's a day, guaranteed, guys. I'm telling you, I'm not lying to you. This will improve your writing tenfold. You read up to 1 to 2 hours consistently every day. Sometimes, for me, it's a chapter a night. I'm consistent with it. Now, not a lot of people need an hour of reading a chapter, but that's catharsis for me, is reading one chapter, at least one chapter a night. That's the consistency for me. That's what I need, and that's what I work best in, is reading at least a chapter a night, so that I know that I've gotten my daily dose of whatever I need to read, or whatever I'm reading right now, which is Ethan Gage, Book 6, William Dietrich. Love him as an author. And that's my mode right now. Reading, and then putting some time in front of the computer screen. Sometimes it's 500 words, sometimes it's 5,000 words. That's the mode I'm in right now. I've got other things pulling me away from my writing, but that's okay too. Life is life, but come back to it. We get our biggest rewards when we think that we have this giant mountain to climb, but we chip at it. If you all remember Shawshank Redemption, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, you're going to love this analogy. It took him multiple years to tunnel out of prison. The plan was in development for years, probably from the first day he got there. Okay? Not necessarily in the vein that he absolutely needed to escape. He could have lived his whole life there. But the whole point is to tunnel. Keep tunneling. Keep working. Keep sculpting. If you don't think that writing is like being a sculptor, then you are sadly mistaken. Keep sculpting your work. Even if you have a poem or a work that's already been published, there are ways to refine it, make it more crisp, and learn based on the feedback that you've already got from your work. You know, some people think that it's called My First Day of School. It's one of my first stories that I got published. When it first got published, they took a chance on me, saying, "Hey, we had a lot of back and forth with this story." I'm like, "Well, what was the back and forth about?" When I finally got a chance to ask them, they said, "Well, it's hella smart. It's almost too high-minded for our reader base." And I was like, I didn't think that. You know, I didn't think my writing and the way I wrote and the story I composed would affect somebody into thinking that they were interacting with or reading from a superior intellect, which I most definitely am not. I just, happen to write about a mathematician, and I happen to write about a super smart kid. So in order for me as an author to write about a super genius kid, I had to throw in some language, some words that made my story, to me, believable, to make it consistent, right? And one of the best lessons learned was, hey, it's okay to simplify, dumb down some language so that your reader base gets a little bit broader. And that's why we as authors know who our audience is from the beginning. If you know your audience is a little bit more adult, it is okay using language that fits that area of readership. If you're writing to get your readership into the young adult area, you're going to have to reduce the amount of expletives, reduce the amount of higher language or adverse language to the young mind, and work from that mindset of, hey, I'm writing this for a particular age group. Let's simplify this story and keep it interesting. You could be totally smart in the sense that the story itself is super interesting and complex, but the language you use to convey that story doesn't need to be. So, upon consistency, build upon that whole idea of what audience you're writing for. Okay? So that's the mode and the method for you. If you're not sure what your readership's going to be, then keep it simple, stupid, so that at least whoever reads your work can consume it easily. But if you're writing for a particular group of people, that's why tech manuals are written for a particular group of individuals who understand and work within that field to know that type of language, so you can use the acronyms and they understand them. It's like the military. The military literally has its own language, and then subsets in the military, like different MOSs, different jobs, have a particular language for their job, a particular vernacular for their work. And that's okay. That's the method and the madness for them. That's why SOP, standard operating procedures, are meant for the general military, for anybody to be able to pick up and read and understand. that's written in a particular vernacular with the understanding that everybody has a base knowledge in military language, in a military vernacular, and a certain branch language. Excuse me. So consistency, and when it comes to publication, absolutely get an editor. Get someone that's going to be able to tell you, hey, this whole chapter goes way off the reservation, man. It doesn't work. It's not consistent. It doesn't fit your timeline. It doesn't fit your whatever. But if you're passionate about your work and you really want that chapter, modify it. Make it fit. Make it work. Okay? Go back to the drawing table and figure out where you dropped the ball and what could work. Pick the brain of the editor. The editor is not just looking for the mechanical fixes. They're looking for story continuity, familiarity, difference in cadence from the different voices you have. If you have peripheral characters that all sound like the same character and they're the echo chamber of another character, it may behoove you to change up how they speak and how they show up. If you think, oh fuck, I'm going to have to go back and rearrange that whole story, that whole character's background, then that's what you'll have to do. Sometimes we as authors have to do that in order to make that character fit within the framework of our story. Have I had my favorite chapter obliterated? Yes. Yes, I have. It sucks. It's like, damn it. Okay, back to the drawing board. Let's go ahead and fix this. I see it as a challenge. Some people may see it as a game-ending thing, but it's not. If you're a writer and you're passionate about writing, you're not going to let one thing hold you back from getting your dream. You're not, because that's not who you are, and that's not what you're passionate about. If you've written this whole manuscript and you love it, you love it to death, and you love it just the way it is, then self-publish, and then go with an editor that fucking favors how you write, that loves the way you do things. If you're faced with an editor and somebody who's criticizing your work that's not gelling with you as a writer, or maybe that's saying, hey, you have way too many things going wrong for me to narrow down for you, then that's like the ultimate feedback. They're saying, hey, what you're doing is not working for me as a reader, and here's why. They're going to be able to give you that valuable feedback and say, hey, this isn't working because you tense jump, or your characters are all the same, your story doesn't make any sense, and here's why, because there's no plot, there's nothing moving it forward, there's no goal for the protagonist, whatever have you, right? And that happens. Sometimes we as a writer think, damn, our story is the bee's knees, it's the greatest thing, it's the great American novel. Sometimes it's not. Let me get back to you guys 1 second. My brother was calling me. I had to send him a text message real quick. Almost done. Alright. So, let's recap what I talked about. Publishing. Okay? Multiple roads lead to Rome. Multiple methods lead to Rome. If you're ready to publish, instead of querying for an agent, maybe the best route for you is self-publication. Maybe that lands you your big deal. It's happened. Okay? It happens. It freaking happens all the time. Or it may be the first time somebody takes a chance on you, and you take a chance on you for what you're worth. And maybe it's a trendsetter. We have seen that as well. Okay? So keep crunching, keep writing, be consistent. If you write in a certain mode, in a certain place, at a certain time, be consistent. Now, life happens. Life sometimes walks in and punches you in the dick real fucking hard, or kicks you in the gooch. It unfortunately, sometimes we can't escape what life does or how it intercedes into our vernacular and our way of being. Okay? Car crash. Don't see those things coming. Can't predict them, but sometimes they fucking happen. Okay? If you're in a car crash and you can no longer use your right hand or whatever, and that was your dream hand, that was a hand that set the whole motion in life for you, find a different way. Drummer for Def Leppard lost an arm. He's a drummer. Like, holy shit, how does he do what he does? Well, he has a rig now, and he still has that same rhythm, still has that same ability in his head. He just modified the equipment to make it work for him. Sometimes we need to do that as authors. Modify the equipment to make it work for you. If you're a better orator than you are a physical typer, get Dragon Speak. Or get a software that allows you to orate your entire novel, or a short story, or poem, or whatever have you. And that may be the best way for you to go. Or do it in segments. Whatever is consistent, whatever works for you. So be consistent. Work with what you know, work with what is familiar to you, and work in that vein, but be innovative too. You have to be able to adapt. So if you're able to adapt and you're able to keep your head on a swivel and learn, that's what you're going to need to do. And read, for goodness sake. If you're going to be a writer and you're not consistently reading, you're falling into the trap of, well, I'm just a writer, or I'm good enough, I've read enough, I can write anything I want. No. There may be somebody somewhere who composes a story that knocks your socks off and does something for you, and you may be able to emulate and modify to your own greatness their style, or something that they do that you love about their writing. So that's the recap for the day. Just like I said, keep writing, keep that mode on, whatever you do. Okay, don't let things fuck shit up for you. Don't let you fuck shit up for you. Keep moving forward. Keep writing, keep reading, keep editing. It is a meticulous, analytic, and thoughtful endeavor to produce something that gets to the world and is received. So just keep at it. Consistency is key. And when you're ready to publish, get an editor. When you're ready to move forward in that realm of, hey, I've written a whole ton of stuff and I'm not getting anywhere. You may not be listening to the feedback. You may have a stack of rejection notices and be like, all right, what is going on? What's not working? Call them back. Call that person who sent you that rejection notice, or send them a letter and say, well, what did you see in my writing that was not working? What did you see in my story that wasn't working for you? And whatever feedback you get, write it down. See if it's good feedback. See if it's applicable. Sometimes it may not be what you want to hear. Maybe you've heard from friends and family that you're the bee's knees and that you've written the greatest American novel you could possibly think of, and they don't understand why, but they have implicit bias. If somebody who doesn't have implicit bias loves your work, receives it well, and wants to get it published, they will move mountains to make that happen, or encourage you to move the mountain to make sure it does happen. Okay? So, feedback, read, innovate, write. And remind yourself, put up reminders all over your house, all over your desk, all over your binders, all over your books, to remind you to read, write, stay consistent, innovate, and publish. Alright, love you guys. Keep reading, keep writing, and hopefully somebody is impacted by Creatacast. Please send me your work for submissions for next week. dwelch9627@gmail.com. I say again, dwelch9627@gmail.com.